Greetings, brethren. I want to make a little recording to talk about an analogy. If anybody's ever seen the device that's known as a diving bell, it's still used today. It's used for scientific research mostly, where divers will go into this device after it's submerged underwater. And it doesn't have normally, or the most crude analog versions of this device do not have a source of oxygen. Basic ones will have a source of oxygen that can pump in there just to resupply if it's for use for long duration. But I want to just consider the absolute simplest version of that. You take any vessel. Usually it has a very narrow entrance. Say a milk jug. If you were to shove that underwater with the opening pointed down, the air that's trapped in there would never get out, in theory, unless you tilt it. You can just keep shoving it underwater, deeper and deeper, and the pressure on the interior of that vessel would increase. But let's just take that analogy of just holding it a foot underwater, so no water actually gets into it, because the air in the vessel has its own atmosphere. It keeps a constant tension against the water from getting in. So I want to use this as an analogy for our consciousness. Because starting as children until the moment we pass out of this existence and have a moment of respite in between embodiments, this vessel being held underwater and maintains a volume of air is a pretty good analogy for what it's like being on this planet. And every time we allow a erroneous concept of the of our existence, we'll just say that, an erroneous concept of our existence to enter into our consciousness, we have punched a pinhole leak into the wall of this milk jug that's held underwater. Every single erroneous concept is punching a hole into the sidewall, the vessel, the milk jug being held underwater. Over time, those pinhole leaks will make the vessel unsuitable for holding water or maintaining the oxygen that's in it, that's keeping the water out. Because the Earth, even though it's a sphere, there's atmospheres around the planet. In these atmospheres, all of mankind's negatively, or I shouldn't say just negatively, all of mankind's energy that we use is maintained within the atmosphere of the planet. So just imagine at 8,000 feet, somewhere in that area of the main atmosphere of this planet, of the lowest atmosphere of this planet, is what really contains the vibration of humanity's energy that they use. It bounces around. It lives in this like a giant pool. It doesn't just blast off into space and disappear forever. It reverberates within the atmospheres of this planet, basically indefinitely. Whether it's a good qualification of energy or an imperfect qualification of energy, all of mankind is using energy. They are thinking, they are feeling, they are speaking, and their outer forms are vibrating at a frequency that is impacting this great soup within the atmospheres of this planet. Most of mankind have no idea that this is the case. That we are basically underwater in this aspect. We live in a great soup of gases. But I want to use this vessel underwater as an example of what happens when we accept concepts of life that are erroneous. Is that we punch holes in this vessel, it begins to leak and leak and leak and leak. The more we listen to erroneous concepts and accept them into our consciousness, we make leaks. And for an individual to oppose those erroneous concepts, or to heal, or to remedy those erroneous concepts, it takes tremendous effort. To push against the pressure of the atmospheres of billions of people misusing, misqualifying, and not understanding a fragment of their power and their purpose of life. The individuals on the path, on a spiritual path of awakening, when they get a feeling, an inclination to awaken, that they are no longer willing to live in a zombie-like existence of having a vessel with a bunch of holes punched into it. When they're no longer willing to drown and they want to rise, they have to learn how to isolate themselves, to create an impervious barrier to these concepts, to this energy of this aquarium of humanity. It's like putting on a wetsuit of sorts, but an impervious wetsuit, and going in the ocean, a dry suit. That is what these individuals have to learn. They have to learn how to put on a spiritual dry suit to be able to go into the ocean and stay submerged for the rest of their embodiment without being touched by humanity's discord. That is a bare minimum. In order to become a teacher, one who can demonstrate, a proper teacher, one who life has understood to be of strong enough character, to be of strong enough temperament, that they will not waver for the rest of their lifetime on this planet. Life has to take that measure of one's character before they grant this individual their inheritance of being a proper teacher, and therefore with the ability to demonstrate. And by demonstration, that means cause miracles to occur, of what we call miraculous behavior. That have the ability to materialize, have the ability to heal. But even then comes the responsibility of not misusing it. They cannot just go around and heal anything they see. It requires a willing recipient. It has to complete the circuit, like flicking on a switch on our wall for turning on a light. It has to complete the circuit, and the willingness to understand and be obedient to this divine law is what's required in the recipient as well. But my point in saying all this is that these teachers have to learn they have to utilize the tools that have been taught by teachers before them, to don that dry suit, to put on the armor, and to use it constantly. It is a constant thing in one's consciousness and feeling to maintain a vigilance, never to allow erroneous concept of humanity's ceasing on use, every word, every thought that goes through the majority of humanity is erroneous. About health, about finances, about, supply on every level, about they have no idea what they're even doing on this planet. All these things have to be held in the consciousness of a true teacher. The price that they have to pay is a life of invincible vigilance. not really a price, because it gets easier as you progress. It takes over, it gains a momentum. But my point is, it's a constant vigilance because of the soup. It's just what this planet is. This classroom is saturated with erroneous concepts and behavior of humanity. And so I'm going to tie this into a couple things. You know, these great teachers come to give mankind instruction of what they have to do in order to awaken, in order to don the armor. Because it's not just utilizing these concepts, it's not just listening to their message and thinking about it and saying, oh, that's a good message. No. That is the beginning, is listening to the message and accepting the message. That is the absolute beginning of the process. That takes no effort. To listen to a message and accept a message takes almost zero effort. But to cultivate the tools they are trying to teach one to employ in their consciousness is like becoming an MMA fighter in the current condition of this world. That's not the case for all classrooms, but for this one is in a bad state. This classroom is an extreme example of what happens when things go wrong. When we have leaders of governments that have no idea what they're doing. That humanity allows and elects these individuals to run countries of people. And these individuals who are supposed to be leaders of people have no idea of how to properly utilize their consciousness or their energy or anything of that nature. And on top of that, they actually misuse their understanding of life. They misuse their life energy to such a degree as to cause greater slave-like conditions for the rest of humanity. I don't want to go too far down into the weeds on that one. The point of this message is really to talk about what it takes to become a teacher with actual demonstration, which is what we should all strive to attain. It's a constant and enduring vigilance and use of the tools that those who have come before us have tried and tried again to teach humanity it's so much more than just listening to their message. Because they are trying to show us how to utilize a workshop full of instruments, which is our consciousness. We must learn how to use this workshop full of instruments to maintain the house, to maintain the home. Just like our homes nowadays, they are in a constant state of disintegration. It never stops. Our homes constantly disintegrate. If we do not employ individuals to keep them in good shape, they just dissolve. Nature will reclaim them entirely. It's a constant vigilance as a homeowner. And it's the same for each of us in embodiment. We have to become a vigilant keeper of our workshop. As we're training and learning and understanding how to use all these tools in our workshop, we must also maintain the structure against the forces that are outside the structure. They're constantly trying to disintegrate the structure. That is the situation of this classroom. But 99.9% of mankind just give in to the natural forces, or what they think are natural forces on this planet. They are entirely unnatural forces. They're just a result of being in the soup of humanity's discord. This is not normal. This is something that needs to be understood. The situation of living on this planet is not normal. Normal needs to be understood as a frequency of perfection that the greatest teachers have been able to demonstrate. That is normal. This level of disintegration and disease and suffering and lack and limitation of every kind is abnormal. This is the greatest thing that mankind must understand the difference. And not be constantly distracted by TikTok and Instagram and YouTube and entertainments and movies and everything else that is constantly distracting us, and all of our stupid hobbies mankind generates. They're completely worthless, that completely subjugate them to a life of dissolution once again, lifetime after lifetime of disillusion. You are given a body as a child, you learn erroneous concepts, and you dissolve the body in the process. It happens again and again and again. But even against these odds that we face of awakening and learning the tools and maintaining the workshop, maintaining the home, in the face of the onslaught of this pressure that is unceasing, a few of mankind eventually armor themselves sufficiently They learn how to utilize the workshop to create tools that are like weapons of light. Imagine a lightsaber. It just constantly defends you from the onslaught of negative ideas, of erroneous concepts of humanity that come in from every which direction. All forms of media, all forms of communication, even within the home and the family. It is unceasing onslaught. Have I communicated this sufficiently? We have to use the workshop and the tools these teachers are giving us to create armor and weapons of defense. These are weapons of defense. Initially. But these tools and weapons that the great ones teach us how to utilize, these weapons of consciousness, how to disarm the opponent, how to cut away the hands that strike us with these concepts, because we are like punching bags. They are constantly striking us, you know. It's constant. It's just unceasing. Like, you can turn on your TV and you'll just be constantly assaulted with pharmaceutical drug commercials that basically teach us that we are vessels of such, suffering and disease that we must keep pumping ourselves full of their chemicals. That's our only chance of happiness. That's basically what these commercials are constantly saying. Just using it as an example. So it does two things. It teaches you the erroneous concept that we, each of us, are what's the right way to say this? There's so many levels of error. Just listening to a single pharmaceutical commercial, it reinforces the concept that, for the most part, this is our one and only life. It reinforces the erroneous concept that if we don't take these chemicals, that our bodies are going to dissolve or be filled with disease. It reinforces the erroneous concept that our source of happiness comes from whatever pharmaceutical concoction they are, pandering on or not pandering, that they are proffering on the market. It reinforces the erroneous concept of our source of healing. If we are in a state of decay of any kind, it reinforces the erroneous concept that we are to turn to these companies for our happiness, our health, and our remediation of physical distress. that we face, that we are to turn to these companies instead of to our source of life. That's a biggie. So that's just from one commercial of how many levels of erroneous human concept is in a single pharmaceutical commercial. And this happens on every form of media. To our TikTok videos, our Facebook. It's just constantly in our face. These erroneous concepts. You have to armor. You have to learn how to utilize the tools these great teachers are teaching us. It is constant. It is unceasing. It's from every direction, on all fronts, at all times. These erroneous concepts of life confront us. So I'm going to tie all this into my current use of psilocybin, because it's one thing to become a student on the path and to live in this world confronted with this at all times. It is a MMA cage match at every moment. And this is why students on the path and teachers remove themselves from society to go into hiding, to have a moment of respite from this unceasing onslaught we find ourselves in order to hone their tools of their trade, to make their armor, to fortify themselves, that they may return to the marketplace of humanity and try to help instruct them. It takes time to forge the armor and the weapons to defend oneself. I'm making this point that even Jesus, coming back into embodiment, had to do this. He was not capable, at least from what we knew, of performing the so-called miracles in his early childhood. He had to go somewhere and have a respite from this onslaught. He traveled to the east, to parts unknown, India, somewhere in Southeast Asia, and then came back to the land of his birth, completely transformed into a being of perfection virtually. He had to have a moment of respite to bring back so much of what he learned in his previous embodiment and to be taught how to utilize these powers properly on this planet for the benefit of mankind. And this is where he honed his craft to become the MMA fighter that he was. On the surface, he was a being of peace. But if one could really understand of what a being like that has to face every moment, the level of vigilance and the level of fight a being like that is, it is like a MMA fighter at the top of their game against multiple opponents. Just think of that. Actually, even thinking of Neo in Matrix in the hallway where they are shooting multiple slugs at him and he is deflecting all of them and stopping them. It is like This is what a being like Jesus has to do. The onslaught of erroneous concepts that is unceasing on this planet. That people that come to him and speak to him and show him, just by their bodies being in states of decay, he has to embody an eternal vigilance, not to be subjected to that level of frequency, that humanity that he is walking in, with the humanity that is disintegrating in the frequency of distress that they are in. It is eternal vigilance. And so I'm going to tie this in to why I am experimenting with psychedelics. Because anyone who's taken psychedelics, who's moved through the basic distresses of humanity, and is already busy at work in their workshop, honing the tools of the trade, creating their armor, to move into a new level of understanding and fortitude on this planet. Anyone who's using these psychedelics for that aspect of life will know exactly what I'm talking about, because it is like going into a sparring match and testing out your armor, testing out your weapons of light. We can utilize these things in normal life, and we have to. But going into and taking psychedelics is like sparring in the martial arts. You learn by sparring. You learn by real-time sparring with the opponent. How to utilize what you've learned. How to utilize the tools of your trade. That is how I feel psychedelics works for me. It is an intentional sparring match with life for a few hours at a time. You are allowed to I shouldn't say allowed. You force yourself into a more intensive sparring match with life. For example, the very first thing I do when I'm going on a bigger journey with psychedelics is it forces me, as I feel it the come up, as they call it on psychedelics, I armor myself. That means a slight tensioning of my abdomen muscles to hold guard over my ganglionic center, which is the only place the energies, or I should say the main place, the energies of the outer world that are inharmonious enter into our physical body is down in our navel area. So the very first thing I do, if I'm not already doing that, is a slight tensioning of those muscles that tells these living forces of the outer world, I am in command here. Number 2, I maintain a constant pressure of love and gratitude. That is my armor. That is my headgear. That is the padding over my knuckles in my MMA match I'm about to enter into. Love and gratitude is a constant armor of pressure in this level of psychedelic experience. I breathe it in, I breathe it out. A constant pressure of love and gratitude pushing out against any opposing force that attempts to enter my ring, my octagon. And then the moment I feel an erroneous human concept come anywhere near me to enter my feeling, to enter my thoughts, and enter my consciousness, you strike it with your sword of light. You don't give it an inch of ground in your mind and your feeling if you know what you're doing. These things are so insidious. They come and they infect. They will infect the consciousness so quickly but the heightened state of a psychedelic user, if done at this level, is entering a match against multiple opponents in an MMA octagon ring. And you will either allow yourself to be pummeled to death and submit, or you will learn to fight and kick the ass out of any erroneous concept that comes your direction. It is a moment, taking psychedelics at this level is like living life times 10. To a certain degree, to the certain amount of how much psychedelics and the frequency you use it is like living life times 10. You are asking life for more intensity if you are ready to deal with it. For these macro doses, for these heroic doses, if you are ready to deal with it, if you know what you are doing with your armor and your tools of consciousness, if you have listened to the proper teachers, it can be utilized in this way extremely effectively. It is not an escape. It is not to submit yourself to a whole host of intoxicating light patterns on your eyelids and your consciousness. It is to hone your fucking craft of being a weapon of light, to shatter and dissolve humanity's discord on this planet. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on the matter. But I thought I'd share how I go into these experiences. This is my life. This is the craft. This is why I have learned mycology. This is what I want to teach others. Don't get too caught up into the realm of mycology where in the sciences, it's so much of it is filled with error on the science side of things. Learn the craft of these teachers and their consciousness that far surpasses and overrides almost every science we think there is. It overrides it. At that level, you have no need for the psychedelics. You have become permanently like there is no opponent that's even a worthwhile foe for the proper teacher. It doesn't even exist on this planet any longer. Psychedelics have no use for them. The sparring ground of psychedelics was left long ago. But for us young Jedis on the path, the psychedelic sparring ground can prove most fruitful. For those that want a taste of a greater opponent than just normal life. Do it in the octagon ring of psychedelics and see if you can survive, to see if you can allow yourself not to be pinned by the artisans of erroneous human concept that you may face. See if you can survive hours and hours of ceaseless love and gratitude to keep yourself ceaselessly armored against these foes. Thank you for listening to my message today. I hope you will take this into consideration as a valid aspect of the use of psychedelics in learning mycology. My blessings to each on their path.